short years.
I'm working really hard on making sure I'm centered because I look very holy right now. And this is bringing back distinct memories of being the angel or being Mary during the real Christmas every year in elementary school.
I was also the angel or Mary. One year I campaigned to be like the director and the writer of the Christmas play, and I wrote the whole thing from scratch.
How do you... I mean, it's been written for a long time.
We did a hot new take that was literally just focused on the animals and like how it impacted their lives.
I would literally expect nothing else from you. Listen, what you were doing was you were making sure that we were maintaining CDC recommendations by wearing a mask that fits.
Yes.
I happen to be wearing a children's mask and it fits, so you never know what's going to happen in this wild world of COVID.
Right, and it's definitely kind of like pants in that everyone who makes them, like the sizing runs different, so it's really a shot in the dark whether or not it'll fit.
Turns out the children's masks from Walmart do fit my face, which is interesting because I was absolutely born with an adult-sized head, and so I kind of just expected it to continue growing with me, and instead my body just caught up, I guess.
That's what's nice about the tie ones, even though they're annoying, because they can fit any head.
That's true.
Things we talk about now. Hello, welcome to another episode of Quarantine. I'm Mitch, and I use he, him, his pronouns.
I'm Amy. I use she, her, hers pronouns. What are we talking about today, Mitch?
We wanted to talk about just safety planning. Right now is a very unique and stressful time, and a lot of people have told us that they're really struggling or things have been kind of hard on them. So we wanted to just talk about how we can make a plan ahead of time to stay safe even when things are uncertain.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different situations that everyone is in. Certainly pick and choose the things that we're going to be talking about that fit your situation best, and know that these aren't just recommendations for one situation or another. If you feel like you're in an unsafe situation or you feel like you're at risk of harming yourself or being harmed by somebody, please know first and foremost that 911 and our emergency hotline are great resources for you, but more than that, there are things that you can do at home to keep yourself safe. We're going to talk a little bit about them today, and if you have any other tips or tricks that we maybe didn't touch on that you wanted to bring up, please let us know, because we're always looking for creative problem solving when it comes to keeping safe.
Absolutely. So the first category, and the one that I know is weighing really heavy on a lot of people, is emotional and mental safety. So when we're making an emotional or mental safety plan, this kind of goes along with self-care planning, right? Like it's the things that we're going to do to take care of ourselves and to make sure that we're getting the support we need when we need it. So the first thing I have for that is, who is someone you can call just to process your feelings with? I know that I can reach out to my mom literally whenever, and she'll hear me even if she doesn't like want to talk. Then what mental health services will you access if you need more support? So we, through Family Counseling Service of the Finger Lakes, you are able to access mental health services through our agency. We have a fabulous clinical team there. And then there's also, like we talk about all of the time, the Trevor Project Hotline, the Trans Lifeline.
211, CPAP if you're local to this area.
And you're experiencing a psychiatric crisis, And then, too, there's things like Talkspace, and what's the other one? Headspace, that's a meditation app. Those are things that
Calm
you can access from wherever you are, to really like make sure that you're getting that support you need. So definitely think about which one of those you'd feel safest engaging with, and just keep that information in your pocket, whether literally or figuratively, so it's there if you need it. And then third, what are just 3 kind things you can do for yourself or for your community today? I know I've talked a lot about feeling like I need to do something to help people around me, so donating to food pantries has been a big thing for me lately. And then I also try to take a little bit longer walk than I would have planned on, especially when the sun's out.
Yeah, and I mean, so talking about that a little bit, I told Mitch one day to drive by my house because there's this gorgeous tree in front of, in between my house and my neighbor's house, and just to take some time to come look at this beautiful tree. It literally looks like it's just on fire all the time right now, and it's so stunning. And so I know that something that you really like to do is to go for walks and find beautiful things in nature. And so every single day when I was working from home, I was looking at this tree, and I thought, my friend Mitch would love this, and maybe he's going through a tough time right now, and this will help. I know you and I work really hard on checking in with each other all the time and touching base, so it can be as simple as that. And if you have a friend who is struggling, just send a text saying, hey, I know that this is kind of a rough time right now, I'm here if you need me.
Absolutely.
Just those little things go a lot further than people think.
I've had a call with a different group of friends from different parts of my life every night this week just to check in on everybody and see how we're all doing. And it's helped a lot. And it reminds us that even though we can't be together, we're not alone. Yeah. So moving on, and this, does get a little bit heavier because we are going to talk about situations of like harassment. We just wanted to give you some tips of ways that you can be prepared if something happens. So first, we're going to talk about school. So if you are at school and you feel unsafe because of the actions of another student or staff and faculty, the first question is, have you spoken with someone about feeling unsafe? Who have you talked to about it? Whether that's someone in the school or a parent who can help advocate for you. There are action steps that the school can take to make sure that incidents don't happen or that they're aware of what's going on, and you are entitled to be safe and have safe access to education. So first and foremost, letting someone know that you are feeling unsafe is a really high priority.
It's also really important to know who your DASA coordinator is. So we talk about DASA all the time, the Dignity for All Students Act. That is a right given to every single student who walks through the doors of their school. And it's the responsibility of your school to make it very clear who the DASA coordinator is, how you can make a DASA report, and who can help you make DASA reports if you don't feel safe doing it on your own. So when you're going through situations at school and you really feel like you need some help, the crucial thing to know is your DASA coordinator. And if you don't know, reach out to us and we can help you figure that out. Clarity is number one key in having that DASA available for us. So it's really important to know who the coordinator is. And if you don't feel safe going to that coordinator, creating another plan to file a DASA report on your own or with Mitch or I is great to have in your back pocket.
It's important to remember that if an incident of harassment because of your race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, any such thing happens at school, and you make a teacher aware of it, that teacher is obligated to make a DASA report themselves. So if you're uncomfortable doing that, that's a great way to make sure that it's being followed up on. And if a teacher or faculty member witnesses it, they're required to report it whether or not they've been asked to. And that information as well can be found on the homepage of your school's website. That's where it's legally required to be, who the coordinators are and the form as well. And then the third point for school is just keeping in mind who can pick you up or walk with you to and from school. Definitely during COVID, I know that on the buses, most school districts, the way they have it, only family members sit together, which in a way, at least people aren't jumping from seat to seat. But I know that that can be a really uncomfortable environment. I know that was a big thing for me, was the bus. So just keeping in mind, is there an alternative? What can you do instead? And then if not, how can you distract yourself on the bus? Like put those headphones in and tune it out until you see your mailbox.
So one of the things that I did when I was younger, I went to Catholic school. Well, I went to Catholic school my whole life, but when I was young, I would walk to my elementary school because it was like just about a block and a half away from my house. and my two best friends lived a house away from me. So there was one house between their house and my house. So every morning I would go over, and Jackie and Katie and I would finish getting ready. We'd have, we'd goof around for a few minutes, and then we would all walk to school together. And we always made sure we checked in with each other before we picked each other up to make sure that they were okay, that we didn't need to be aware of anything, things like that, just so that we knew how well each other was doing that day, but also we sort of had a pulse on what was going on. Whether it was, I don't want to walk to school today because I don't feel well, or I'm not going to school today because I feel like I'm being bullied. We already had our plans put in place, and it wasn't even something that I thought of as being a safety plan. It was just like, these are my two best friends. We're walking to school together and we're goofing around. We're wearing, plastic bags around our socks so that the snow doesn't get in our boots, and playing and goofing around. But now that I've gotten older, I realized how crucial that was and how important that was to me, and what an important piece of my routine that was. So even, again, those simple things that seem like, oh, I'm just going to pick my friend up, like that's actually a really, really good way of maintaining your boundaries and creating a safety plan for yourself.
The buddy system is never a bad idea. Anytime you can identify someone who can be present with you, whether it's physically or who you're texting while you're walking, something like that, it's a great way to maintain safety. Very similarly, if we move on to talking about work and employment, thinking of who can pick you up or ride with you or walk with you or be on the phone through your hands-free device with you during your commutes to and from work. Like something that I know has helped a lot is I have a friend who works in an inner city, and she feels very safe in her neighborhood, but just to make sure that we know where she is when she's walking home at the end of her shift, which sometimes is like midnight, she shares her location with our group chat of our very closest friends, just so we know where she is.
Well, and that's super smart to do, because even if it's something you've done 1,000 times, that 1,001st time, something might happen that's never happened before. I mean, we talk about doing that as like a safe practice for when you're going on a first date. So when I was with the partner before who I'm with now, we met, and I made sure that my friends knew where I was and who I was meeting and what time we said we were going to stop hanging out, so that if they didn't hear from me, they would know, like, to just check in with me. And maybe it was because we ended up having a great time and I got distracted, but in case it wasn't, we had somebody there who would know.
Oh, yeah.
So setting up that kind of safety plan is huge, because, it's the same thing as people walking with keys between their fingers at night to keep themselves safe. It sounds super alarmist and super extreme, but it's never a bad idea to be too safe. Even if you feel silly doing it, that silliness still might be the thing that keeps your headspace clear enough that you feel confident to be safe. So making those plans, having somebody on the phone with you. I know I call my partner all the time. Every time I get in the car, we call each other. And sometimes we just call each other out of habit, because we're so used to checking in to make sure we're still doing okay, everything's going all right. So that cannot be overstated, how important something like that is.
It does feel like overkill sometimes, but the thing is, like, your safety is priority number one, and if that's what helps you feel more in control of the situation, then by all means, if it's a good practice. You get to decide what works and doesn't work for you. Similarly to school, at work, have you spoken with someone if you are feeling unsafe in your working environment? Who have you spoken to, and what action steps are being taken? You have rights at work too, very similar to in school, especially under New York state law, that you are protected from harassment. So if you bring that up, it's a good idea to identify who your HR, human resources contact would be, or who the person who handles reports of that is within your organization, because every organization, it's not quite as structured, but every organization should have someone that you can turn to and talk to, and whether that's someone who is specifically designated for that purpose or just someone you feel safe bringing this to, identify that person and remember who they are and keep that in mind in case something happens.
And then similarly to at school, it's, you know, who can walk with you or who can be with you on your commute, whether it's from the office door to the car or whether you have to walk from your office to a, you know, like a parking garage. It's really important to know who you can walk with. I know that I like to walk out with people if I can, just because it's fun to have some like cheerful banter to sort of button up that work day. But we also benefit from the fact that we're in an area where our parking lot is very well lit. So I don't necessarily have the same concerns as I might if I had to walk to a parking garage where there's so much darkness between me and the garage that I don't know what might be there or who might be there. It could just be a raccoon running across my path. That would still scare the daylights out of me, right? So it's good to have people with you just to know who your safety net is and how you can make sure that you're getting from point A to point B safely.
Yeah, absolutely. Then, like, too, for people who are still working from home, the Zoom safety practices that we've all learned about requiring waiting rooms, not publishing links, those are great ways to protect yourself from any silliness that might happen around that as well. Like we were talking about, when you're out and about, whether you're getting groceries, you're going to see somebody, or living life, who is someone you could call or text to let them know where you are or where you're going? Could you share your location with them if you're comfortable doing with that? And then if you were to be stranded, who would you call?
That's a huge one because a lot of people, like, I know for me personally, my father has a cell phone and I think he probably touches that thing about 4 times a year. So if I needed to get a hold of my father, like if someone was like, you call your dad right now or I'm kidnapping you, I'd be like, you may as well just put me in your car. Like, my dad does not answer his phone. So I know I call my house phone, my parents' house phone, because I have a better chance of getting somebody that way. But it is really important to know the people in your lives who often have their phones on them and the people who you would want to be able to protect you but might not have their cell phone. So if you're in a situation where it's like you need an answer right now, I'm not going to call my father. I will call my house phone. I'll call my partner first, but then I'll call my house phone to be like, hey, I need help. I've caught my dad on his cell phone a couple of times, and each time I've been like, oh my gosh, hi. So it's really important to know who you can call and who is accessible to you, because if you're calling somebody because that's a safety net for you, but they're not good about answering their phone, that's going to amp up your feeling of anxiety and your feeling of fear. And when those feelings are skyrocketing, our ability to make good, clear choices starts to diminish. So it's really important to have solid plans put into place.
Yeah. A big thing for me, and it's changed a little bit now that I'm a grown adult with a wife, but so my mom is generally my safety person, and if I call my mom's house phone, I get my mom 9 times out of 10. She's pretty good about it. But there are times where I've been in a situation where I need to call my mom, but I can't safely make a phone call, whether it's because I'm being harassed or I'm just not in a place where it's possible to make a phone call, like a movie theater or something, and I just need to let her know something's up. So what I have done in those situations is I shoot a text to my best friend who has my house number memorized from our childhoods when that was how we would communicate, and she'll call my mom for me to relay the message. So it's a little bit non-traditional, but it's worked really well, and it's gotten me what I need in a couple of tight situations before. So thinking about something like that too is a good like backup plan for how you're going to contact someone.
Absolutely.
Also, having a code word or a code phrase is something that we talk about in safety planning a lot, that you can use that's nondescript, doesn't say something is necessarily happening, like banana.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as like, hey mom, when you come to pick me up, can we grab some peanut butter on the way home? And mom knows, I gotta go now.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether you use that in a phone call, a text message, a social media message, or an email, having that pre-established code word with friends and family lets them know that you need help without you having to say that, depending on where you are. It's kind of like that story that goes around about the 911 call to the pizza place.
Ordering pizza.
Yeah, something like that. you want to have the person who you're calling know what you're talking about, because you don't want them to have to guess and get confused and hang up on you because they think you called the wrong number. But it's a really good practice to just have, especially for youth. I know that, like, there were times I would go to a friend's house and something would happen at my friend's house and I wasn't feeling safe and I needed to get out and go home. And so I would call my mom and say something nondescript that we had pre-established, and she would know that she needed to come pick me up. And it was a great way to get me off the hook out of that situation.
Absolutely.
And then if an incident or harassment is occurring with you when you are out and about, thinking about if you can safely record it or document it in some way. If you're in a store, can you go to customer service and get help that way? What are the things that you can do? You don't want to escalate the situation. You don't want to argue back with somebody, not because we don't believe that people are capable of growth and change, but because that's not always a safe move. And again, priority number one is safety.
Well, and a good thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times when somebody's engaging with you in a hostile way in person at a store, it's because they're hoping that you'll react and
absolutely.
sort of add fuel to that fire. So instead of engaging with them, just take a step back and be like, okay, I'm out. I'm going to go down to this aisle instead. Just don't engage with them, because they're looking for that reaction so that they can be like, well, I felt threatened by this person. And that's how trouble gets started, and that's how fights get worse. So that's a really important tip to remember.
Too, if you can't get out of the situation, like if you're cornered in any such way, letting the person know that they need to back off very loudly, letting them know, I'm not going to have this conversation with you. You don't want to, again, like, give in to arguing with them, but loudly stating that this behavior is not welcome will attract the attention of others who may be able to aid you in getting out of that situation. But that is going to be your, you can't just turn and walk away device. But, keep that in your pocket as well. Very similarly, something I was reached out to specifically was incidents of road rage that have been occurring locally recently, with people kind of harassing other drivers on the road, and what to do in that situation. Again, do not engage. Do not engage. Keep your windows up. It's cold out, and keep your doors locked, especially like if you're sitting in your car somewhere. It's really important to, and it sounds silly, but not to make eye contact or like look around at the other person. Like, you're not going to win an argument of someone who's rolled up and wants to yell at you from their car. They don't know who you are. This is not a personal thing. They have just decided that you're going to be the target of the anger and aggression that they're feeling. It's not a teachable moment. Don't try to make it a teachable moment. If you suspect that they are following you, or you see that they are following you, or even if you just feel plain unsafe, it's important to not go home or directly to your place of work or somewhere that you go frequently, because you don't want that person to follow you to those places. But what you can do instead is go to the nearest police station or fire station if you're more comfortable with that, or a place that just has security cameras, like a bank or a grocery store.
Honestly, I've heard of people going to military recruitment offices.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, because so a lot of cities, I know Canandaigua has like 3 or 4 of them. So, because of my job, I know where the courthouse, the fire station, the sheriff's department, like I know where all these places are. But for people who don't know where these places may be, and they might not be marked, when you're driving right down Main Street in Canandaigua, there's a military recruiting office. And when you're going behind the businesses on Main Street, there's a military recruiting office. So any place that is attached to some form of security, you can, even if you're on a college campus, go to the campus security office.
Absolutely. That's your first place that you go if you're on a college campus.
So there are a ton of different options to keep yourself safe, but at the very least, like Mitch was saying, somewhere with a security camera is preferable, because with any luck, they'll be able to capture that on the recorded footage.
Yes.
And you can go back to the store the next day and be like, hey, I was here at 10:32 in the morning and something weird was going on. Do you have that? Like, I would like to bring that to the police. And they'll be able to help you do that.
Yeah, or you can go directly to the police and the police will intervene with the business instead. That I definitely have experienced this myself. So I formerly lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I came back to this side of the country with a New Mexican license plate. And just seeing the word Mexico during a time that was very like heavily incensed around this idea that was false of like illegal immigration and stuff like that. People were harassing me right and left just because of something that was on my car. And so things that I learned were to go to these places and how to switch up. Like I had a couple different ways to go home from work in case someone was following me. And I always kept my windows up, especially at stoplights and things like that. Not making eye contact was huge, even though I could hear what was being said to me. Pretending I couldn't helped me just keep driving and not escalate the situation.
Absolutely.
Definitely too, make a note of license plate, the color, make and model if you can, whether it's mentally or you're able to pull off somewhere safely. Use hands-free methods to call 911 and don't try to record or take any pictures of another vehicle unless you are parked. It is incredibly unsafe and illegal for you to use your phone while the car is moving, and that should not be something you try to do. Remember, we're trying to get you out of the situation safely. Something I know works really well is just noting the make and model of the car, because even without a license plate number in a given area, law enforcement will be able to narrow things down with that information.
That definitely happens, because my partner got pulled over because she was in a town where they were trying to find somebody who was driving a silver truck, and she happens to fit that, but it ended up not being the make and model that they were looking for, so she was able to go. But it's not always so even if you don't know the license plate, if you know what the make and model is and you can say the general direction that they were going in, they should be able to find that person.
Any identifiable details too, like if the headlight is out or if there's a dent or a scratch that you see in a specific place. Bumper stickers is a big one. So those are great things to just take a mental note of while you're getting yourself to that safe destination. And then just generally talking safety planning for right now and for always, because these are always good things to keep in mind. Right now during COVID times, we've all learned, I think, how to make sure that we have what we need to stay put. Now is a good time to stay put. So thinking about, do you have groceries for a couple of weeks? Have your medications been recently refilled? Do you have the only brand of dog food your dog will eat because she's very picky? Like, do you have the things in your house that you need to just stay put for a couple of weeks? And then during times you are alone and you are at home, who are you staying in touch with? Who are you reaching out to? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm in very regular communication with a large number of people that live in different states all over the country, just so that tabs are being kept on all of us.
So something else to keep in mind, kind of going off of that, is if you're feeling unsafe where you are, who can you reach out to?
Right.
So it could be anybody. If you're in a situation where you feel like you're unsafe and you can't rely on somebody who you're with, who do you have that you can reach out to? It's really important to know who you can travel to safely or who can travel to you safely. It's also really important to know that if you have to leave quickly, where's the closest public place you're going to go to that will make you safe enough that you can make a better plan? Can you make your safe person pick you up at the Ace Hardware down the road? Can you meet at the McDonald's up the road? So it's really important to get yourself out of the situation as quickly and safely as you can, because once you're out of it, you'll be able to make further plans and make them more clearly and more safely.
Absolutely. Did you want to talk about, Amy, like if you do need to leave home quickly for any reason, what kind of the process is with that and what you should bring?
Absolutely. So when you're in an unsafe situation and you're thinking about leaving, something that's really important and something I tell people all the time to do is to have like a little travel knapsack that's really innocuous, and it might look like it's just clutter. So I'm seeing baskets over here right now that could easily be like a picnic basket, right? So get all of your ID, your cell phone, your money, your charger, any medications that are crucial, maybe a couple of pairs of clothes to change into, any cash that you have. Make sure you've got your ATM cards or your credit cards, health insurance cards, any keys you might need. All of those little things that you don't think about day to day because they're always, in your pockets or in your backpack or wherever. You want to put all of those things together. If there are any like comfort items or any sort of what's the term I'm looking for? Like items that are very special to you. Sentimental things. Thank you. Like pictures, or I have a stuffed cat I've had since I was a baby, so if I needed to leave, Big Kitty would be number one thing in my backpack. I was a very clever, creative namer. But things like that, really important to get together. If you have children, it's also important to make sure you've got birth certificates, social security cards, you let the schools know, you let daycare know, make sure you've got their clothes, make sure you've got their formula or, the food that they're eating right now, because it can be really difficult, and especially in stores right now that are kind of getting wiped out day after day. It's really important to make sure you've stocked up on those things and you have them ready to go. If you're bringing pets with you, make sure you've got their bowls, their leashes, food if you can. You want to make sure you've got their collars and their tags, because if, God forbid, they did take off. I know my dog Lennox has jailbroken 3 times this week.
Oh my goodness.
And he was just like, he's just going for a joy run. He went over to our neighbors at one point because he was like, is she home? Is my auntie home? And so he was just waiting there. But if he had taken off and he didn't have his collar on him, people would have thought he was a stray. And it's really important to make sure that you've got all of their tags and their identifying information, and any medication that they also might need. So it's a lot of little things that can be thrown into a bag very quickly, but you also want to make sure that you've got that bag somewhere that you can grab it and go, but your partner or whoever's making you feel unsafe might not necessarily know where it is. So like I said, grabbing that picnic basket because it just looked like it was gathering junk, right? I had someone I worked with really closely who specifically made sure that she was a sort of messy person because she had a very organized chaos, so she knew where everything was. But when she was getting ready to leave, it looked like she was just making a bunch of donations of clothing. So we moved her out piece by piece by piece because she was donating all of these things that she no longer needed. She was donating them to her new apartment, but we played it off in a way that it looked like she was just getting rid of all of her things and sort of like going through the mess that had already been created. And in doing so, we had all of the necessary documentation, we had all of the necessary pet stuff, and we were able to get her out safely. But it was definitely a very well thought out process. So when we're talking about needing to get out quickly, you want to make sure you've got that bag right there and ready to go, because we don't always have the luxury of donating our clothes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And just keeping in mind, like finding places that you can go if it does get to be something you have to leave your home for. I know that if I ever had to go anywhere, I can think of like 3 places right off the top of my head where I would go first. And we don't say this to like cause fear or any alarm or anything. It's just a good thing to keep in mind of if a situation ever does unfold for you where you have to go, like a natural disaster even, knowing where this stuff is so you can get it out of your house quickly is just a good practice to have.
It is. And I like that you brought up natural disaster. So we're here in New York, right? We're in the Finger Lakes region, and we've got a couple of great lakes. We got Lake Erie and we've got Lake Ontario that are also throwing things at us. So we have more snow than we know what to do with. And I mean, it was snowing this year until like June. So when we're talking about needing to have things accessible, Mitch is right. We're also talking about natural disasters and talking about those sentimental things. My great-grandparents' house flooded in Painted Post.
Almost
no way.
Yeah. The flood of 72?
Maybe.
Oh, that's so crazy.
I don't know.
My family's from Corning, and the flood of 72, there was a line on my grandmother's wall.
Yes.
From where the water had risen to.
We have a painting. It's actually, I'm taking it when my mother decides she no longer wants to decorate the house with it. There's a painting that is watermarked from where the line had risen on the painting.
The animal heads in my bathroom upstairs have the line.
Really?
Really, I'll show you later.
Yeah. So it must have been the same.
It must have been the same flood. Yeah.
So
anyway.
But
a lot of stuff was lost in that, though.
Yeah.
Like, truly.
And so speaking of sentimental things, like that painting, I want it now because it's sentimental to me because it was sentimental to my mother, and it was sentimental to my mother because it was sentimental to her family, right? So we have this like generational sentimentality that I want to preserve, and I'm not in a position where I feel I need to flee for safety at any point. But the minute my mother takes that off of her wall, it's coming over to my house.
Right.
So when we're talking about needing to make sure we're prepared, we need to be prepared for anything that might make us unsafe. The flood of 1972 is a great one, right? So another really important thing to remember too is that as winter is coming, make sure your gas tanks are at least halfway full if you can. It takes a lot of very cold weather to make your gas lines freeze, but it does happen. And if you're trying to get out of a situation, if you're walking home from work and you're trying to get to your car and something's going on in the parking lot, you want to make sure that you can get in that car and go, right? So as it's getting colder, we need to make sure that we're maintaining our gas levels in our car, because that's something that a lot of people don't think about until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. And keeping a snow brush, an ice scraper, a shovel, a thing of salt or kitty litter is also great winter practice. Last winter, I had Riley go jailbreak and had to go find my dog, and my car ended up going off the road because it was, of course, in the middle of a snowstorm.
Sure.
And I had a friend who had to come over and bring a bucket of salt because I didn't have what I needed to get out of the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and two, like, I know I was raised that we keep candles around and flashlights with fresh batteries just in case. That's why I use that to justify my 3-wick candle addiction.
I don't even justify it. I just love them. I just love them.
Yeah. So, just basic things to keep in mind.
Yeah. So, and like Mitch said, we don't talk about these things to scare you or to make you think that it's the end of times, because it's not, right? But safety is something that doesn't necessarily get talked about all the time. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging this discussion, because there are a lot of different ways to look at keeping safe. And we're coming into a season where it's important to make sure we're being safe. And, things happen daily that are out of our control. And so if we can gain some of our own control back by making sure we're prepared to handle these situations, that actually does wonders I know it does wonders for my mental health, is knowing that, like, if I feel out of control, I still know that these are the areas I can maintain control over safely and healthfully.
Absolutely. We are a very resilient community. We're a community that cares for one another. I think we've learned even more how true that is during COVID times. So you will always have people to rely on and to turn to, and just identifying who those people are for yourself and remembering that is a very grounding thing to do during these really continually uncertain times.
Yeah. So let us know if you have any tips or tricks that we didn't really touch on. Otherwise, we will be back. We'll be back next week. I'll be on vacation next week, so we're doubling up recording today. So we'll be dropping an extra video next week for you. So, excuse me, it will make a difference if I'm on vacation or not.
So we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye. Need to find a different mask.